Hello, and welcome to our show today. This is Worried About Nothing. We're going to be talking about self-doubt. I'm Danielle.
And I'm Katya.
And I'm Kim.
Self-doubt. I know I still have it. It's not really present in this moment, but I know at least in the recent past, there has been instances of self-doubt. Still doubting, if I'm doing the right thing in terms of like what practices to do, what spiritual practices do I choose, which ones are best for me, things like that. I guess that's been my most recent encounter with self-doubt.
Well, self-doubt has been always a big topic for me. I have a lot of thoughts around self-doubt. It's all, when I start noticing it, when we joined our Artemis course, and first of all, it was all about the course. I don't fit here. I do not belong. I can't achieve anything. Of course, there was this idea that I'm achieving something. So the self-doubt, the thoughts are constantly there. And what I had to do is just keep rejecting it. No, that's not true. Don't listen to it. Just come back. Don't listen to it. And the thoughts were constantly coming. And sometimes they were so strong. One of the worst one was during the retreat when I was walking to Artemis in Jason's house. And the self-doubt was like, what am I doing here? Why? I mean, I have family. Why am I even coming here? It was this doubting was so strong. And I remember just fighting it and just keep walking through it. Just the thoughts were there, but I wasn't following them. So it seems to be something that is constantly there. So I don't feel it anymore in regards to the spiritual work that we're doing. It seems to I actually do feel a sense of belonging. It's not a problem anymore, but it does come up in other areas of my life. Since I've succeeded with the first part of it, I feel like I'm going to do the same, just keep rejecting it. And hopefully the thoughts won't be coming up again. And other things I've noticed when I'm truly present, when I'm not really thinking too much, then there is no time for self-doubt too. Because even if the thoughts come up, I'm so in the moment, so much into doing what I'm doing. I'm really busy with that. Then even if thought comes up, there is no time, there is no space for it. So that could be, I don't know if it's true or not, but I figured, well, maybe if I'm truly in the moment, then I don't really have space for the self-doubt. So maybe that could be a good indication that I'm not truly in the moment when I'm really going into my thoughts and actually following that self-doubt. So anyway, something to watch for.
I think that self-doubt is one of those emotions that are kind of, I'd term them luxury emotions because they happen when you have a lot of time on your hands, So I think like guilt or like beating yourself up, self-doubt is something that happens when you have a huge amount of space to let your mind just go mad and come up with all sorts of thoughts that don't exist, aren't real, aren't connected to you in any way. Whereas, like you say, when you're in the moment, there's no time for that. There's no thought of that. There's no space for that because you're just in the moment and you're just being, you're doing, you're whatever it is. Whereas self-doubt is just like this little self-perpetuating cycle of thought police, that kind of starts with one thought of, oh, maybe I could have done that differently. And then it kind of gallops into, and that person did it that way, therefore it must be so much better than the way I did it. Everything I do is wrong. Oh my God, I'm an awful human being. And it just rolls and it just cascades and becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. And it all just sparks off with one little thought that is very rarely true because it has nothing to do with who you are in the moment or what you're being. So I feel that with self-doubt, it's the little mind sensors that are trying to put you down or make you feel bad about yourself. And anything that does that is not true. Because there's absolutely no reason to put yourself down or to censor yourself or compare yourself to anybody else. Because everyone's just so unique and amazing that it's like comparing chalk and cheese and birds and bees and, it's... You can't do it. It's like that. There's that little poster I remember seeing somewhere a few years back. It said something like, if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will always think it's not good enough. or something like that. I'm paraphrasing, but that's what self-doubt is. It's going, oh my God, I'm not climbing like that squirrel. I must be a terrible, terrible squirrel. You got a squirrel.
I love it.
Yeah. I guess because we're all humans, we like compare each other, right? I'm not as good as that other human, but if we think about how unique every person actually is, then what you say makes a lot of sense, right? Because you wouldn't expect a fish to climb a tree. I wouldn't expect me to climb a tree like a squirrel either. But it's just so much easier, I guess, to fall into that when you're looking at other people.
It's much easier to stop the thoughts once it's coming up, just completely cut it off, don't listen, switch, instead of going into the story and making a big drama out of it, because you can go so deep into that you create so much suffering that you can go into the situation and it's like, oh, I'm not good enough in anything. Oh, I'm not good enough at this. Oh, I can't do that. Oh, that person did it much better. And then you can get to the point where it's like, okay, I might as well go and kill myself.
Oh, seriously.
Yeah, you can just make a big snowball out of nothing. And if you can just stop it right there, right before it turns into anything, and stop following the mind, that's really, you can cut all of that out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, it sounds like you've had some success in doing this, right? Stopping at that thought. And what do you think, makes a difference when you're able to stop and kind of catch that thought versus when it snowballs, or maybe it doesn't snowball anymore for you, but if you could speak to that at all?
Yeah, I mean, if I catch myself on the thoughts, it's like, no, that's not true. And then I'll switch and just keep doing something and just trying to get myself into the here and now and just being happy and appreciating what is in front of me. And I think that's what I wrote on Facebook page, that for me, asking that question, the Jnana yoga has never really worked well for me, but I've noticed that it's actually more successful recently. And I ask myself, who is that listens to the thoughts? And I keep asking myself, is there anyone there? And who is that is suffering? Who is that is want to follow those thoughts? And I found it's really working because it brings me back to the here and now. In the past, it didn't do anything for me, but I've noticed the difference. It actually does help a lot.
Right. And for people who are listening who might not be familiar with Jnana yoga, that's the idea, right? Is that we're asking those questions not to have them answered. It's just to kind of create that space. So we're not looking to actually answer the question when you ask yourself, what did you say? Who's hearing these thoughts?
Yeah, I think the main question, as Aratim explained it to us, is who am I? But you can always ask, is there anyone there who is asking this? Things like that. So it's basically a journey of self-inquiry. And the idea is not to go deep into the mind and answer those questions, but mostly just to return back to here and now, to your true self, to the heart, to whatever you call it, the core. I just find it's easier to call it here and now because that's the one that makes the most sense for me. That's what I call it, to just returning to now and just being here. Yeah. It does help because once I go into the snowball, I start noticing the suffering, because then I'm not good enough, right? Then I need to be better. Then there is comparison to something that it could be better, that it was done better by somebody else, or this idea that it has to be ideal. And if you stop comparing, stop climbing into the mind and bring yourself back, then it definitely helps. I remember in one of the Jason's videos, and maybe we can put a link, I think he was talking about meditation, and he was talking about training your mind like training a dog. Of course, I'm paraphrasing, but it's like sit. It's the same here. Come back. Don't go into there. Come back. You're here. You don't need to follow this mind. So yeah. It's really helpful because I remember training my dog and there was a lot of repetition at the beginning.
Maybe we should all get dogs. Build a little bit more compassion for ourselves and our minds and understand the work that might go into. The training, the practice.
It's so interesting with comparing, because when self-doubt comes up, when, as you were both talking about, as a result of comparing yourself to others, comparing is such a subjective thing, because you look at somebody else and you might think, oh, they're better at something than me from your perspective. Whereas they might be looking at you going, oh, they're better at it than I am from their perspective. So it's not true. None of it's real. It's all just in your mind. It's all just your perspective. And so the fact that we can torture ourselves with this thing called self-doubt based on something that's not even real, it doesn't even exist, is insane. It's insane what the mind can do sometimes, and I think when you fall out of it or fall through it, through whatever method, jnana yoga or whatever it is, or just seeing or having a moment of, oh my God, what the hell am I doing, whatever it might be, then it just seems kind of amusing, the fact that you can beat yourself up from the inside so much over something that the mind is presenting to you as something true when it doesn't exist. And then the fact that you can take it and run with it, and the amount of suffering you want, on some level, want to cause yourself, because, the more it snowballs and the more you fall into it and the more it kind of becomes a thing. In some ways, the more it's feeding into the story you might have about how you're not good enough, or how you're not as qualified, or not as whatever it might be. Or you might not be gifted at playing the piano like somebody who's been playing since they were 2 and you've just picked it up last week. It's all that kind of comparison that can happen. It's really kind of crazy, really, when you look at it. But we all do it. But it is insane.
Yeah, you bring up a good point, because I was thinking about this the other day, because I'm a person that I still don't know really what I want to do, right? What I want to do with my life. That whole thing. I'm getting better with dropping that, but I was thinking about it at some point, with having extra time. A lot of people have extra time during this quarantine and whatever. And people are trying to figure out, what their next step is going to be. And I've just often thought over my life about how there are people who are really naturally good at certain things. And I feel that we all have strengths or talents to a certain degree, but the fact that I had never had anything that I had tried and was some sort of a prodigy at from the beginning, I was like, well, maybe I just haven't tried it yet. I have to try more things. I don't know. I think that's kind of something that had, my self-doubt was kind of intertwined with that, because there are people that, they just do something and they're so good at it, and that's what they end up doing as their career, I guess, or whatever their life's work is. So it was just kind of like, what is that for me? Maybe I need to try more things. So fun, different ways that things like that come up,
Some of these people that not you, I mean, you as in everybody, sometimes will look at and go, oh my God, they're so naturally gifted. Might have spent 30 years getting to be that naturally gifted. They might have a spark of talent that they have trained for hours a day to master. We don't know. It's just sometimes when we just see somebody, we don't know anything about the work that's gone in. We don't know anything about the story behind it. And yes, some people are naturally gifted at things, but I think everything takes work, everything takes dedication. And I guess it's about, if you're looking for, what your thing is, maybe it's what you feel is, what you enjoy. I think that's a very important thing. What do you love? What really makes you feel alive when you're doing it, that you might find that you're then good at. Or if you're not good at it now, you love it enough to become good at it. I think sometimes that can be it. It's not necessarily that everyone was born a Mozart, that was kind of born playing the piano like a genius. I think most of us have to work at it to varying degrees and to varying success, whatever success means, but I think that can be something that can cause self-doubt in people, comparing to others that have done so much work. And I'm not talking about you here, Danielle, but some people will look at people who've studied for decades and go, oh God, I'll never be as good as them. I'll never be able to do that. So I'm just going to give up now. Whereas you don't know. If you spent decades doing it, you might be better or not better. It doesn't matter, but you might, there'll be a level of mastery or proficiency that will come from that. So it's like that phrase, what is it? It's like comparing your behind the scenes with everybody else's showreel. It's what people put out there or present to the world is sort of the surface or the end result or the beautifully put together thing, whereas all the blood, sweat and tears is behind the scenes, and the falling down and failing and playing all the wrong notes and all that kind of thing.
And one thing I find recently, which was quite interesting, is sure, you can enjoy doing certain things, but if you feel like you will do it and you receive payment for that, then it becomes a work. And then you might no longer enjoy doing those things. But if there's still things that, whether you get paid or not, and you still enjoy doing them, that might be something that you truly love. I don't know if that makes sense what I'm trying to say. Because once you consider, okay, if I do this and then, how much I'll get paid per hour. But if you don't look into that approach, that's what I found recently, particularly with gardening. I never even considered it because I volunteered for the community garden and I enjoy amazing, amazing greens every week. So I have fresh salad every week, which is amazing. But I didn't find it being work. I actually, because I enjoyed it so much that it didn't matter to me how much time I spent. While if, let's say, I do felting, I don't know, I kind of look at the hours I spend and this and that. So I don't know, for some reason it's different. When you truly enjoy seeing something and growing something, it has a different feeling. Another thing I wanted to mention is not beating yourself up if you're not good at something. We all have different skills. And for example, I'm not good with music. I went to music school and I was never accepted because I wasn't good. And then I'm sure you can improve at it, but that's okay with me. I was able to accept. And there's certain things with languages, like I was never really good in my native language. So I remember when I was writing, I would have massive amount of mistakes and things like that. And that was my native language. And I was having additional tutors and things like that. And I have the same thing in English. So instead of beating myself up for it, I just accepted it. And now I'm much happier. Because when I make a mistake or something and I see it work, it used to cause me so much suffering. I'm like, why I didn't check? Why I didn't do that? I could have read it, 10 times, and I didn't do it. And now I just accepted it. And I try to do as best as I could to read again and double check. Because I see my mistakes. Every time I write something, I see my mistakes. It's like, oh gosh. But I just accepted it as reality and I'm okay with it. It definitely helps.
Yeah, I think it's a good point, accepting what you can and can't do. Everyone is different. I mean, it's funny that you bring up music because when I was younger, I always wanted to be really musical. And I had 2 left thumbs and feet for hands. I couldn't play anything really. And my singing voice kind of made people cry. So I sort of stuck like that. But it kind of, I accepted that I'm not musical in the sense that I'm never going to be, on some stage performing in front of other people, but I still enjoy it. So I'll still sing around the house when I'm sure that nobody can hear me, because I like doing it. And it doesn't take away the love of it, so it's not necessarily about being good at something. It's how much you love it, how much it brings you joy, how much pleasure it brings you. And just how much it's an expression of where you're at or what you're feeling. Or sometimes I might just break into song when I'm washing up for no reason, just because I'm feeling happy. It's not for anybody. It's not for anything, and I think sometimes this thing with finding purpose or finding the dharma or the meaning in life, I don't know, the older I'm getting, the more I feel that that's not unimportant or irrelevant, but just, to me, it's more about just living in the moment. It doesn't matter if there's a thing that I'm supposed to be doing or good at. It's about connecting to who I am and what I'm enjoying or what I'm feeling in the moment. And that, I guess, in a way, is your dharma, because you're being you, you're being authentic, you're being in the heart, or you're feeling love for something. And it doesn't matter if it's for others or not. It's kind of taking away that comparison or that measuring, which causes the self-doubt and the suffering. Often if you take that away and just are in the sense or in the beingness of yourself, you can feel it. It's like an expansion. It's when you're just, even if you're just sitting in your flat tidying or something, and you're doing it from that place of feeling in the self, there's that expansion, and I'm sure it radiates out, and it doesn't even matter if it does or doesn't, but there's that feeling of being true to yourself in that moment. And I think for me, that's what it's about. So when it comes to self-doubt, I used to doubt myself all the time, but it seems to be less and less. And especially over the last few weeks, that seems to have dropped away. And I think it's connected to not really caring what other people think. For me, the self-doubt used to be me comparing myself to others and seeing myself through their eyes, which was very convoluted and very tiring to be in that space all the time. Whereas that seems to have fallen away now. So now I don't care what others think. So I don't care what they think of me. I don't care how they see me. So that's something I don't have to worry about. And I'll just stumble through, and it feels like it's just putting it out there. Like I just recorded a small podcast on vulnerability because I've been feeling very vulnerable recently in a kind of beautiful way. It's very edgeless and kind of not contained. So it's just it feels just very real. And I sort of stumbled through the podcast, and I'm sure it didn't make much sense at all, but I just put it out there because I thought, well, that's what I was feeling right then. People may or may not understand that it's English, but I don't know. But it's just, it feels in that sort of spirit of just moving as you feel moved to and doing it without thought of what other people might think or without even judging it yourself. You know, if I were to judge the podcast, for example, I just put out there, you know, some of the thoughts could be, oh God, that was very incoherent. I didn't explain myself clearly at all, or that's not expressing what I felt. But I don't think any of those things because I don't care. I just put it out there, and it may or may not resonate. It may or may not make sense. It may or may not feel true to anybody else, but it was true to me right then. So it feels more natural that way, more organic that way, I guess. If that made any sense whatsoever, I don't know if it did. Okay.
It did. When you write it in the moment, when you feel, I'm sure whatever you spoke about was really true in that moment. I haven't had a chance to listen to it yet, but I'm pretty sure it would make sense to all the listeners.
My God.
Of the podcast.
I think self-doubt can come out in interesting ways. Like if you're doubting something that you believe in, you might not realize that you're doubting it, because it's like you're so confident in it. But when you feel the need to push something onto someone else, then I think that's a sign that you're doubting whatever it is. Yeah, I don't know if that makes sense. And probably not in all instances, but I think sometimes it's like if you really feel the need to express something in a convincing way, I guess, to convince someone else of it, then it can kind of come across and be like, okay, well, maybe you're not so sure of yourself because it's like you want to convince the other person so much. I just had an experience recently where, what did my mom say to me? She said that I like to push my opinions onto other people. And I was like, I don't really feel like that's what I'm doing. I'm just very sure in what I know. Like I'm certain in what I know, but I can understand how it might come across as being pushy or aggressive with it. I was like, I'm just pretty certain. By her saying something to me made me doubt myself. And I'm like, am I certain or am I actually trying to convince her of something? And I'm like, not really. It was like, because I know. So I'm just sharing kind of where I'm coming from. Because she has other people in her lives who express their point of view. And I'm just like, well, I don't agree with that. And I'm vocal about it. So.
But it's not like you're trying to persuade her that your opinion is the right one, right? Or you do?
I don't think so, because I'm not thinking really about what she thinks about it. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree that sometimes people, I'm not saying you, I think sometimes you can be very confident in what, not you, people, one. The terminology is so lacking right now. But, you know, people can sometimes be so confident in what they're saying that there is that absolute certainty, definitely. And I think at the same time, sometimes, like you said, people can try and convince somebody else to believe something. And it's like, if that other person believes it, then they can believe that it's true about themselves, you know, kind of thing. And I'm not saying this about you, but, you know, you sometimes do see that in people, that they'll be trying so hard to convince you of something. And you're looking at them going, why? You don't even believe it about yourself at all, you know. And often the way that something is received, I mean, it's not really any of your business, but sometimes that can be, like with your mum, it might be that you're saying things that are in such opposite perspective to the way that she believes life is. So let's say it might be something political or something like that, that's so anti everything that she's established her identity upon, that she has to almost push back against that by saying, oh, you're trying to do something. You know, the way sometimes people can do that, rather than seeing a vulnerability in themselves or seeing some kind of trigger, they'll go, no, it's you're being pushy, or you're being aggressive, or you're being, I'm not saying she said that, but you know, sometimes people can do that because you're touching on something that is scary for them, or rocky for them, or whatever it might be. You know, maybe there's something there. And I think sometimes people can do this too, that they'll have a group of friends that they'll tell their opinion to, and everyone will agree with them. And because their friends agree with them, it makes them feel that they can believe what they believe or what they've said. And if somebody then comes along and disagrees in a way that they don't really care whether you agree or not, you know, that's a real threat to that person's security, because security is being surrounded by people that believe what they believe or agree with what they say. And if somebody comes along and goes, no, you're wrong, bye, you know, it's like it just rocks the boat. You know, there can be that sometimes too. And it's self-doubt on their part. You know, they're not believing or having enough trust or faith in what they actually believe to have no doubt. So let's say you, Danielle, had something that you believe very strongly about, and somebody came up and said the complete opposite. You just look at them and go, okay, fine, believe that, that's fine. But it wouldn't affect what you believed, because you believed it strongly enough to know that it was true.
I like to do that comparing sometimes, though. So like, say someone did come up to me and they're like this. So I'll take whatever they said over here, and then I bring up whatever I currently am holding, and I'm like, and I kind of weigh them internally, and I'm like, me, like, or, oh yeah, maybe something, you know, kind of like that. I always try to compare it to like what I'm already, I guess it's like that kind of checking with truth, being like, does that feel like it fits? Does it make sense on like some deeper level, I guess is what it is.
But that's a good point, staying open, because things may change, your perspective may change, you might realize there is a few more components into the whole story, and it's good to believe in what you believe and check if it's still true, but at the same time stay open to other possibilities.
Yeah, because what we believe changes sometimes, doesn't it? So I think it's good to be open to that as well.
I think that's probably a good way to actually build self-confidence, if we're going to go to the flip side of self-doubt, because allowing for that kind of flow, I guess, or just the presence of being with what you actually feel to be true, grows that confidence, and you're less likely to doubt yourself, I feel like, in the future. I don't know, it's new territory for me, so I don't have a lot of history to compare successes to, but it feels right.
But that's what I found recently with a lot of political things that are going on, that sometimes I can be really stuck on this idea, but it's good to be open and just see what's happening, because you don't know the full story. So it's good to stay open at the same time, believing what is still true, right?
Yeah, rather than clinging on to something and not letting go of it as more information comes in. It's like letting everything being a river rather than being a barricade or something like that. And I think self-confidence to me feels like it's about being very, very present and having the confidence not in what you believe, but in your ability to be it, or believe it in a moment, or be present in the moment. Because as soon as you pin your anything identity-wise on things that you think or feel or know, that becomes static, or that becomes unmoving and rigid. Whereas if you're in the motion of it, in the flow of it, that everything is what it is, and you believe what you believe in any moment, and that could change in a second. But having the confidence to know that that's what's happening, and that's what is, rather than building, you know, like a Lego tower of belief systems that will crumble as soon as the bottom one is pulled out. It's instead, you know, looking at the sea rather than looking at some kind of tower that you've created or some kind of dam that you've built against the river, just letting it flow through. Instead of checking with the mind what is true or not true, or what makes sense or doesn't make sense, or compares or doesn't compare. Checking in with the inner truth, that feeling of self, that inner, not even measure, but that inner knowing that will tell you if it's true or not. So you don't have to hold on to it because you know it's true. And because you know it's true, you can just let it flow away, if that makes sense. So it's kind of being in that flow I think you were both talking about earlier, but just being in that allowing, I guess.
Beautiful. I love how you express. It's very poetic.
Oh, thank you. I just feel that self-doubt is such a damaging thing. It's such a self-torture type thing to do. And I've experienced this. I mean, when I was younger and up until not very long ago, I was always full of self-doubt. It was a very big part of my everyday life. If I can remember being so crippled by self-doubt that I could barely function. So it was the thought of what other people thought was so overwhelming that I didn't even know what I felt about anything in any moment, because it was just frozen, trying to act in the right way or trying to behave in certain ways that was set or I thought was set. But now, as I'm falling out of that, it's just insane that I did that to myself, that I was so imprisoned by thought, my thought, other people's made up thoughts, my made up thoughts, made up circumstances that didn't even happen or may never even have occurred or potentially never will ever become. All of that just we used to whirl through, and now it's just like, no, no, I'm not doing that anymore.
And I also wanted to say that self-doubt can really stop your success, because instead of, let's say you have a new project, or even sometimes I'm trying to think, let's say painting, you have something in mind, and then you can start self-doubting, oh, it's not going to turn into something good, or nothing will come out, or I'm not creative enough, or I can't do that. And then you never start. But if you just went and did it without even giving any thoughts, without even thinking, well, it doesn't have to be a success, just go and do it. Go and do it and enjoy it. Then you might have actually gotten somewhere than never starting anything. Because it's so easy to just think, oh, it has to be perfect. And I can fall into that because I don't sometimes like too many trials. I was like, well, even with cooking sometimes, if I try a recipe, I try it once. If it works and there's few things that I could improve, I'll continue on that recipe and I might improve it again. And usually in the third time, it's perfect. But if I tried it first time and it failed completely, I might not try it again. And there is, I don't know, sometimes I feel there is this self-doubt. Oh, is it all this long, I have to spend all this time. Is it going to turn into something or not? Is it going to look the way I want it to look? Is it going to turn into something perfect as I imagined it in my head? So yeah, it's easy to fall down that road, and just because your mind is always there, it's always judging, it's always comparing, and it's just not listening to it. And as I said, this is a big one for me. I'm still not fully out of it. I keep noticing it and just keep saying, no, you got to do it. Just, you have to go and do it no matter what. And if something comes out of it, great. If not, well, that's okay too. At least you tried, right? The worst one is not giving it a try.
Right. And then there's the wondering what if after the fact too. So you might as well just do it.
Yeah. And I think going back to the, fish climbing trees thing, I think perspective is so key to everything, in that something that you think you might just take for granted or not even think is something you do well, or is something to be appreciated in some ways, other people might look at and go, wow, I wish I could do that, or that's so talented. Or, sometimes the things you can take for granted about yourself are some of the things that other people see and appreciate in you. So it's just trying to allow all of that and not judge yourself for what you think are weaknesses or flaws, because they're not weaknesses. There's, weaknesses and flaws are such derogatory terms for things that you've decided as a person are not good, in inverted commas, whereas the good things are whatever. But none of that matters, so I'm probably in the worst state to do a podcast actually, because I'm just like, no, nothing matters. Everything's fine. But and I think, it's just can't focus on that external perception, the eyes of somehow of looking at yourself from the outside. So it's just doing it, like Katya, you said, just do that painting or do that cooking or do that gardening or do whatever it is that you love doing, and see, something might flourish from that, something might not, but you'll love it, and just continue being yourself, because I think, for example, people that, have self-doubt, like my mom sometimes, she speaks 5 languages, and sometimes she'll go, oh, I don't know the word for that. I should know the word for that. So, well, you know the word for it in 4 other languages. So I think don't beat yourself up about it, It is perspective or perception a lot of the time.
Just wanted to say, because of something that you had brought up before, Kim, it reminded me that when you do something, you bring a different energy to it than anybody else brings to it. It's kind of like with painting. So they have those paint nights, right, where maybe a group of friends will go and paint the same painting, and someone might like, oh, yours came out so much better than mine. I really like that one. And then their other friend likes theirs better, like stuff like that. It's the perception. And it's also whatever you bring into doing it. I was talking to my mom about this because we were watching some show. She's telling me about this guy who was making wine barrels or something. And it's just like part of whatever you bring in your energy. Like you said, if you have a love for it, it's going to come through. And it might not one person is everybody's favorite something, So like if you're painting or you're cooking, you might be someone or a bunch of people's favorite artist or favorite chef, and other people like other people. So it's just, a matter of taste and perception and like what you bring to it. People will appreciate different qualities that different people bring to different things. So just, I guess, the importance of everyone's own uniqueness.
And it's beautiful what you just said. I remember watching a show where the lady was making pottery, and there was many pieces that she hated. She was like, I don't like them. And she wanted to throw them away. There was somebody came in as a guest. I was like, wow, I love these pieces. Can you sell them to me? And she was like so astonished that somebody wanted those pieces because she hated them so much. So it's just amazing to see that. And this is what Kim said, that you can take so many things for granted and you don't even see any value in them because you might have been doing them since you were little and you don't even see anything special about it. But other people might find it really, really special. It was actually quite interesting. Yesterday, I was making a lemonade, and then I decided to share a little bit with my neighbor. I said, would you like some? She's like, so did you squeeze your own lemons? I look at her stand. I was like, how else do you make lemonades? And she's like, well, my kids just buy a pocket and just add water, and that's what they do. Because I was like, how else? It's not possible to make it a different way. So it's just amazing that you just take so many things for granted that sometimes I cook certain things from scratch. But other people think it's something amazing that you can actually go and cook it from scratch. So, yeah.
And I think it's about bringing the authentic you into whatever you're doing, because that's what people respond to, or that's what people feel. It's bringing the energy of you, the authenticity of yourself into it. So whatever you're doing, whether it's writing or singing or even just talking to people, it's just bringing that authentic you into it. So, I mean, even like with these podcasts, they may not appeal to many people, but there may be certain people that are really drawn to one or other of our energy or our authenticity or what we're saying, whatever it is. But it's not about thinking about that. That's not the motivation to do it. Doing it is to be ourselves, speak about things that we feel, and put it out there and hope that somebody listens. Even if it's just my mum,
Or my dad.
But it has to be that. So we're not pretending to be anything that we're not. I think because that will never work if people try to be something they're not and try to present something they're not. It's just inauthentic. Whereas if you're authentically you, even if it's stumblingly and haltingly and clumsily, that's what people are responding to. So whatever you're producing, whether it's art or music or whatever it is you might be you're creating. Doesn't matter how good it is. It's if people respond to it, and what they're responding to is you. So it has to be you. It has to be genuinely you. And you can't doubt that. You can't have self-doubt about you because you're the only you there is. So there's nobody to compare to. It's you. You're you.
Right. That you said that beautifully. You can't compare you to anyone else because you're the only you.
And I think if you're enjoying the process itself, then the result is secondary. Sure, it matters, but what matters is that you're truly enjoying the process of making it, of doing it. And if it's present, then, well, nothing else matters. You're truly there, you're truly in the moment, and you're truly enjoying making it, like this podcast.
Yeah. And I think so many things can come from that, when you're doing something, especially if it's something that you've never done before, or you're pushing the boundaries, or you're doing something you might be scared about doing or have doubts about, think you can't do, but you try. There can be so many untold benefits that can come from it, so many joys or gifts you can get from it, or skills, or whatever it might be. So it's always worth trying that thing, not letting yourself stop because of self-doubt. I mean, I remember before we started doing the podcast, I was terrified of talking in front of anybody, and recording was, the thought petrified me. And now you can't shut me up. It goes that way sometimes.
If you continue doing it, then you build your confidence.
Yeah. It's through practice and trial and error. And you can learn things about yourself. Like, for example, I never really thought I had opinions about anything, but it turns out I have a lot of opinions about a lot of things, and I have a lot to say about a lot of things that I didn't realize before. And that's a surprise.
That's true. You can learn so much about yourself during the process. You might think you have no patience, and then you can wait and wait because you're excited about the whole process, and you're like, oh wow, I actually have a lot of patience, and things like that.
And you can learn things you love as well. Like Danielle, when you did that painting for Ratima, maybe you'd said that you'd never painted before, I think. And then you did it and you really enjoyed doing it.
Yeah, I enjoyed the process. Painting's always very interesting for me.
In what way?
Oh, just because I really try not to have anything planned out as to what I'm going to paint, because I just know that I wouldn't want to do it otherwise, because then that perfectionist tendency would kick in. So I just kind of usually start with like what colors that I might want to use or something like that. It's funny, more often than not, I start with like the color yellow. I was joking with my friend Angie, and I was like, well, if the painting's not working for you, you could just always add more yellow. I don't know where it came from, but it was funny. But always really, really light. Like, I don't know. But I tend to start there a lot, which is interesting. Because my mom hates the color yellow.
Yellow sunshine.
Yeah, I think that's what it's like. It like feels like light to me, like the essence of light. Because I don't want to just paint white, because it's got a little bit more warmth to it, adding a little bit of yellow. Here's my self-doubt kicking in. Who's going to care about how I paint or what color I start with? Who wants to hear this?
And for that reason, I think we should put a picture of your painting. I know we tried that before, didn't we? It didn't work. You put it on Instagram, didn't you?
Well, we have the paintings. Yeah, we have one of my paintings on Instagram. I have the other ones on my page. So, yeah, they're there. If people care to find them, they are there. Anything else you want to put in here?
I guess the last thing I would say about self-doubt is, it's kind of inferred by what we've been saying, but I feel that where self-doubt is, self-love can't be. So it's a very good indicator, I feel, that if you doubt yourself, that you're not in a place of love for yourself or for anyone else. Because when you are in that place of love, when you're in the heart and you love yourself, it's not that you think you're brilliant at everything, but everything just is, and it's fine, and it's the way it is. So there's no doubt, because everything's perfect as it is. So that's kind of a sign, I guess, in some ways it's helpful that if self-doubt is there, then you're not loving yourself.
It makes sense what you're saying about self-love, and if you doubt yourself. So I think the more you love yourself, there is self-doubt.
Thank you for listening to our podcast today. This was Worried About Nothing, and we spoke about self-doubt. If you enjoyed the conversation, please like this video and subscribe for more content. If you'd like to share any information with us, experiences where you have self-doubt, or any questions that you have for us or topics that you'd like to hear us discuss, please leave us a comment down below. Thank you. We'll catch you next time. Bye.